to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And our friend Jody Lynn is dealing with a medical issue. She won't be able to join us this week, but of course, we will be looking forward to having her rejoin us next week. And it's kind of a little sad because we have a guest rejoining us after being here a month ago. And Jody Lynn and I both agreed we were looking forward to meeting again with Hilary and talking about the tune-in effect and the other tools that she teaches. And I just know Jody Lynn is disappointed, but that's all right, Hilary. We'll keep carrying on here. So, Hilary DeCesare, thank you once again for rejoining me here on the show. And how are things in your neck of the woods?
So incredible to be back. And I'm sending out all that healthy energy, everything around Jody Lynn. She is incredible. Hopefully she's listening right now and knows that she is with us, even when she's not with us.
She is. Absolutely. Yeah. Regardless of whether she's even tuned in to the audio of the podcast, we're all tuned in energetically at all times. So the connection is there. It's just a question of what form of reception you're. And let me tell you, she is really good at reception. I don't know if you picked up. She's a channel. She channels, and very clearly. So she can get. And you got a message, send it. She'll get it.
So the question is, who has she brought into your world when she's channeling? Has she kind of shocked you sometimes when you're in conversation and she says, "Hey, I got a word from somebody"?
She doesn't really attribute it to a particular identity. She treats it similarly to the way Abraham Hicks works. Abraham being like a collection of non-physical beings, and her she doesn't really have a name for her collection, but her collection functions in much the same way as Abraham does. She doesn't do it in the sense of, like a parlor trick where she's constantly doing readings and channels and so forth. So when she receives messages, her translations into human language are much more concise, much more condensed than with the kind of detail you come to expect from Master Hicks, for instance. So you don't really get the sense of personality so much. What you get is the sense of the wisdom that comes from source energy, that comes from the other side, and that part comes from.
I took that away from our conversation. It's interesting, and I think I probably have been on 70 podcasts this year alone already.
You've been busy.
I've been a busy bee here. We're going to talk about the bee later. But what I notice is when I am in the presence with hosts that are not, they really understand the energetics behind it, the energy that and it's like not like-minded. I don't care about the like-minded people out there. I want like-minded energy, so that we elevate each other. And even within the first 20 seconds of being with somebody who's hosting a show, I can tell where they are. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't meet each other in the middle or even elevate each other because of, mirror neurons and all of the, wonderful things that can happen there. But when I came on the last time, I felt like a jolt. Like I was an electric car, and I was almost on my last mile. I remember it had been a really long day. We were doing it in my early evening, and all of a sudden I came on and I could feel both of you energetically charging, and it does something to me. And I said, I do the tune in process, and we'll go through that again. Right. But I did it before I got on, and I was at a higher level, but then I immediately, like an elevator, I got lifted up, and then I could tell I was even going like above. I kept getting like more and more of it. And I'm like, so I understand where, you plug in, right? And I think this is so important for everyone to think about. Where are you plugging in? Is it a socket that's just like draining you? Or is it a socket that's like truly lighting you up, filling you up, And I think that that's exactly what your show does.
Well, thank you. First of all, I appreciate that. And interesting that you're saying this, because yesterday's episode with my good friend Joel Elston, we were talking about who is in your tribe, which is exactly what you're talking about. That was the title of yesterday's episode.
Which is so relevant, because as you say that, who's in your tribe, and everyone says, you are who you surround yourself with, the 5 people. But for a majority of us, especially now, for those of us who are working from home, right? We're finding that we're surrounding ourselves with more of the family members. We're spending more time. And if there are people in that immediate circle that are draining you, it's kind of like, how do you bring in more of the energy you and I are talking about? I mean, even right now, just on this, conversation, it's like, how do you continue to elevate yourself? And I get asked a lot, what can you do when you can't get away of some of the family members, and yet that they're potentially bringing you down and not allowing you to shine as bright as you can. And I often say there's really 3 things that I like to make sure I do. And one of them is, after you are, or before we do the tune in, we talked about the tune in process very quickly. We're not going to redo that, but I am going to at least outline it again. We talk about tuning in versus tuning out. Right. Tuning in is all around really figuring out your biggest challenge or intention. And then you go into elevating yourself. And this is scientifically and neuroscience based, with a song, doing it for at least 20 seconds to change your state. Then you go into creating that 5-dimension, all of the different senses of a movie, and a mini movie where you're the star performer, and there's colors and lots of amazing. You can go back to the prior episode that we did and really listen to it. And then you go into the 4th step, which is the micro action, and what you can do to keep moving forward. But tuning in and doing this step, whether you've just come from a meeting or a in-person or a Zoom meeting where you have felt like the energy has just been sucked out, it actually gets you back up so that you can go on to the next meeting, bringing a higher level. And when you look at that, the way that you'll be able, and there's a chart in my book, which is Relaunch, Spark Your Heart to Ignite Your Life, which talks about becoming a manifestation magnet. And you can't become a true manifestation magnet if you are operating at a low level. You can't become the manifestation magnet for magnificence, for the good things. You will instead get the mundane, the things that you're like, ho hum, I'm not that impressed. And that's what happens to us, where we're like, I'm not really, I don't really manifest. I really don't do a good job with that. And it really doesn't work for me. That's that whole manifestation mundane. That's where you're like, you're at a low level, so you're going to get back low level, that you're attracting. And so when you start to think about elevating yourself, music, art, these are the forms that through, hundreds of thousands of years have been allowing us to elevate ourselves, right? It was the art on the cave walls. It's the music that, tribes did that allowed us to continue, whether it was song through the voice, whether it was instruments. And so in today's world, and I sit here and I'm like, you have this great ability to change, to make a change instantly. And one of the things, my 3rd comment about all of this is that change can take place immediately. Growth takes time.
Yes. It's an excellent description, an excellent distinction too, because we are humans, and as humans, we want, especially in the 21st century, people attribute this to the 21st century, but really this has been going on for generations. People want instant gratification. We want it to happen right now, and if it doesn't happen right now, well, then there must be something wrong.
And how many times are you like, this, that song, Garth Brooks, where he, and I toasted you and said, that song, Friends in Low Places. Remember that
Right,
song?
right. Yes.
Okay. And remember, as he's talking, he's like, this is what I wanted, but it didn't actually happen, right? And
Hmm.
so sometimes we have to realize that even though we think this is what we want, the universe has a better, plan for us. And
Yeah.
why are we racing to try to get there? Why are we saying, well, gosh, it hasn't happened yet? Or, well, this is what I wanted, and I only got this. Instead, being like almost that, inquisitive. Remember the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew,
Hmm.
those book series. And it was always like finding the next clue. Instead, looking at it like you are trying to find the next clue and that it's not a
Hmm.
one and done.
Right.
It's okay. There was a little bit of a change. You might have gotten a little something. It might not have been exactly what you want, but where's the growth in this? And then you're
Right.
like, okay, well, I actually did grow a little bit along the way. I'm moving in that right direction.
That's the key right there. Because if you can identify that you have grown, and by the way, if you are pushing air in and out, you have grown. I guarantee it. You may not have grown in the direction you wanted to, but I guarantee you have grown one way or another. And that active growth, like you say,
Right.
it does take time. It doesn't happen overnight, but it is observable if you take the long view on it. The challenge is that we want to take the short view. That's what we need to take our attention away from. Is that
I,
short view. It didn't happen in the last 5 minutes, so it can't be right. It didn't happen in the last day,
right.
so I must have screwed up. It didn't happen in the last week. I set the goal. I set it had to be done by Friday. It didn't happen by Friday. I must not be good at it.
Well,
And
and
none of that is growth.
no, and what's really interesting? I'd say probably one of the number one reasons people come to me is that they're feeling like there's a disconnect of what they're doing, where they thought they would be at this point. And I often say, you know what? This is probably the number one reason that I'm doing what I'm doing with
Mhm.
relaunch is that I literally was feeling like I was stuck. I was feeling like I was irrelevant. I
Mhm.
wasn't feeling like I was doing anything really well in my life with, I had my little kids, I had my work, I was going there, never feeling like I really was where I should be at the right time. And realized that I had to make a change. I was, getting
Mhm.
health issues. I was relaunching, like I had literally had melanoma. And I knew at that point that if I didn't change, I would continue to go down this path. And when you feel irrelevant, when you don't feel like you make a difference, when you feel like you're working and you're in that, hamster wheel, I often call it like when you're at a park and there is like a carousel, right? And the only difference between a hamster wheel and a carousel is that, you got the rat or the mouse on the hamster or the hamster on that, where you've got people going around in a circle and
Mhm.
you're trying to make it go faster and faster and faster, and eventually one of the kids gets sick, right? I gotta get off, or they fly off because it's going too fast and they're like, I just got to get off this thing.
Mhm.
And when I started to really look at this as, and I talk about the why, right? Like I would say, well, I really want to be passionate about something. And then I started to realize that, and I was talking to this fabulous woman who also is a channeler, works for
Oh.
FBI, and she was on one of my shows, and she said, it's like when you are trying to go for your why and you're thinking, well, I want to have this happen because of passion. And I
Mm.
often say, to people, there has to be a joy about it, right? The joy
Yes.
of life, the joie de vivre. And she said, well, it's interesting when people only go for, I've got to have passion, emotions change so quickly
Oh,
based
yeah.
on circumstances. And this was such a profound thought. Her name's Karen Romano. And she said, Hilary, if you're constantly just trying to go for the passion, or as I was saying, the joy or the happiness, as when you're putting on your intro, it says, the happy and be happy.
Daily dose of happy.
Yeah, daily dose of happy. You've got to be thinking it's really challenging to stay at that level 100% of the time because relaunches will happen, right?
Yeah.
So if
we live in a world of contrast. I mean, you're not going to stay there 100% of the time. Welcome to the world.
So all of a sudden, if you're basing your why around an emotion, around I want it to be because I'm passionate about it. Let's say I said this. I am doing relaunch because I'm passionate about helping people relaunch into their best versions of themselves. Okay. Sounds pretty good.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Except that, well, all of a sudden, life's going to hit me. Life's going to hit you. You might be one of my, one-on-one coaching clients. And I'm sitting here saying, but my why is that I want to be passionate about this, but I'm not feeling passionate about it today.
Yeah.
In fact, I've had a really crappy day. In fact, a lot of bad things are happening. And it's not the case today. I've thoroughly been looking forward to seeing Walt today. But all of a sudden, you're out of alignment. And I talk 3HQ. The 3HQ is the headquarters. And you've got your 3 H's, head, heart, higher self. And you're in your head at this point. And the passion comes from the heart, right? The passion is that I've got something that I'm really looking forward to, but it's not in alignment because at that point, you've got life hitting you. You're in the head. And so where I now am guiding people, and it just like came to me, I was like, oh my gosh, Simon Sinek has that wonderful, the why, right? We got to ask the why before the how and the what. And it's more than that though. It's when you're in that highest self, that highest place, that top version of yourself, the best version of you, that's where you understand the overall purpose. That's why purpose becomes really the fundamental foundation that has to be where the why starts. And then you build onto the why with, okay, now the emotions that I'm going to charge with it are the passion. And then on top of that, we can go to, all right, now what are the steps? How am I going to get there? What am I going to really help people do? And what's my process? What are my pillars? What's my vision and my mission and all that? So it's really interesting as we sit here and emotionally we get charged up. I really want people to be thinking. That's where the tune in process becomes so significant, because the first step of tune in with that questioning your intention, your challenge, what you're working on, that's all head based. Then we go into, okay, so now let's tune into the song. Let's elevate ourselves for 20 seconds. That's all higher self. That's the highest self. That's the energy behind it. That's obviously the highest self step to 3HQ. But then the third part, where you're creating the movie in your mind, where you're charging it up with colors and emotions, that's back to heart-based. And then the last step, which is the micro steps, that goes back to the head. So it all of a sudden you're like, wait, no matter what circumstances hit, you have the ability to be grounded. We hear that word grounded, ground yourself, just get grounded. But you have the ability to get grounded by using the tune in power tool. I think that's like, net where people get, so lost and feel like, hopeless, stuck, overwhelmed, underwhelmed, is when they don't have a, like, what's my first step? What do I do? How do I combat this? And so I go back to, I remember at the very beginning when we were still in the green room talking, and I said, do you remember what your action step was? Do you remember when I took you through tune in? And I started laughing. I'm like, we were talking about your challenge was in relationships. I think it's now been about 7 months since you got separated. Divorced 7 months now, because it was, I think, about 6, maybe 7.5 months now.
Right.
And you said, it was really trying to find another relationship and one that was truly empowering to you and
Right.
felt really like authentically you. And then the second was, the song. And you had said your song was September, and we took it up for the 22nds. And then the third step was, creating what you really ultimately were going for. Too many people don't get clear. They don't really know. So you can't get to a place if you don't know what you're really going for. And then your last step was you were going to reach out and ask a woman that you had recently met on a date. Okay, so I've been like so excited to hear, how has the tune-in process gone for you? And what happened?
I'm going to keep the tension going by not answering the question directly just yet. I will answer it in a moment.
Circuitous. Keep us like spinning, on that hamster wheel.
Tune in next time for.
Yeah, exactly. When Hilary comes on the next time, we're going to get the answer.
No, I won't make them wait that long. But no, I wanted to bring something in based on something you said, because I thought it was a really interesting point, and it cued something in my mind. You talked about how we can't maintain joy all the time. We're dealing with the world, and when we deal with the world, there are going to be times where we're just not feeling it. We're feeling miserable, perhaps. We're dealing with pain or anger or frustration, or name the emotion. And it brought to mind something that another channel who listeners will know very well, his name is David Strickle. David is very much like Esther Hicks. His Abraham is called the Stream of David. And we've had the Stream of David on the show many, many times, really interesting episodes. One of the best messages that we received from the Stream of David one day came via a meditation that the Stream of David shares through a boot camp that David puts on. And this meditation, basically, it's a guided meditation where you get yourself into, you do the usual meditation steps, right? You get yourself relaxed, you breathe deeply, you do all that kind of thing. And then you take your imagination further and further away from Earth, out into deep outer space, until you get to the point where Earth is this little tiny dot that you can barely even see. And from that vantage point, you appreciate your own situation on Earth as seen from Source's perspective, because that's the way Source sees it. The way we see it, the way we experience it is, oh my God, all this craziness is going on. The way Source sees it is, there's another example of expansion going on. Completely different viewpoint. And I bring that in partly because I want to get your input on it, and partly because I think my sense is that it fits in beautifully with the tune-in method, because the tune-in method is about redirecting your attention, using music into a joyful state. And that's what the Source energy perspective is all about. It's about being in a joyful state by just, regardless of what you're dealing with, what you're looking at, you look at it joyfully, because, hey, this is all just great expansion going on here. I'm curious to know what your take is on that.
Well, and that's why I literally created the tune-in process. And so I'm going to go backwards to go forward. So we've got this, you're not giving me the answer I want, and I'm going to try to give you the answer that you want, but I'm going to go with a different approach here. So when my daughter and we were driving in a car when she was young, and she is musically inclined. And this whole idea came to me. She would get in the car. She would be, mad at the world, mad at, the boys in her life, the girls in her life, and especially mad at me, right? There could even be like a form of hate there for a little bit.
Sure.
And we would get in the car, and so many times it would just be like, the energy was just awful. And I would get to whatever location to drop her off, and I'd be like, okay, bye. And I'd be like, whew, thank God she's out of the car.
Wipe that energy off my sleeve.
That was like, let me roll down the windows and bring in some, new air in here. But here's the thing. One day I could tell that it wasn't just anger. There was sadness, disappointment, anxiety. There were so many of the emotions going through the car. And so she is a fan of music. She loves music. And so I created on the fly. I'm like, I got to do something different. I created this change the channel, which was step 2, as you know, in Tune In, change the channel. And I'd created this game, and I would push invisible buttons, and I would say, all right, now I want you to sing country, sing Taylor Swift, sing, the Grateful Dead, sing all these different songs.
Mm-hmm.
And during this time, initially she thought it was the stupidest game ever. And then she started to play along. And this is where Tune In, literally the genesis of it.
That's where it started. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because all of a sudden we would get to, and this took a few times where she'd get in the car and finally she's like, okay, let's just play that tune in game or change the channel. That's what it was called. Let's just play change the channel. And I would do it. And I would be like, okay, genre, pop rock genre. Now I want you to sing, oh, wait. And I'd throw her some curveballs. I would be like, Shania Twain. And she'd be like, what? But she would, play along with it. I would go, even Diana Ross, because she knows, my mom and I were big fans of Diana. So we would do this. But here's what happened. I would get her to her location and she was a completely changed individual. Completely changed just by what was going on with music and elevating and going higher. And what you're saying is it's that super consciousness, right? Yeah. It's not just going from conscious, it's going from even the higher level of the super conscious. And when you look at step three in the tune-in process is that movie of your mind. And if you remember, what I asked you to do is pretend like you're actually sitting in a movie theater and you're in the front row and you're like watching, observing. And I love that you're saying, from space, from source, you're seeing your life and how that would go. And what happens, we are human beings. And so we will have those times where you end up breaking up with somebody, you end up having a loss, you end up hearing truly, really, bad news. And you have to be willing to lean into it and understand that, again, we're human beings. So we have to go through the idea of emotionally evolving, right? And so being at a joyful state all the time can feel disingenuous. And I will never forget when my mom was living with us when she had terminal cancer for, 14 months and then passed away. I would feel guilty when I would go out with my husband because she was living with us and we would have dinner. And I'd almost go into the evening with, I can't have too much fun because it wouldn't be right.
You can't have too much fun. I love that line.
I can't. And then I realized, good grief, if I can't elevate myself, I'm gonna, it's like the noose around my neck getting tighter and tighter, and the albatross, right? The albatross around your neck, and you just can't get it off. Get it off, and you can't. And finally, there was a point where I'm like, I can't be at this level of such low energy any longer. It's out of alignment with who I am as a person. Mm-hmm. And so I said to myself, I'm going to literally tune in. I'm going to take my energy up. I'm going to be totally present with my husband. We are going to have the greatest dinner. We're going to have the bottle of wine. We're going to be like, oh my God, the greatest night. And it's going to fuel me until I can do it again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, there's something, there is something so critical about this. And the next day I went to my mom and she said, so how was dinner last night? Because she was long asleep before we got home because we were having fun. We stayed out a little later. And I said to her, I said, you know what, Mom, we really had a great time. And she said, my middle name is Jane. And she said, Hilary Jane, bottle it up. And every time you need it, those perfume bottles of the old days, she said, bottle it up. And every time you need a little spritz of it, pull it out and just spritz yourself. And it's the tune in process. That's what you can do. So I love that it does allow you to bounce back, bounce. But with the bounce, the ball's still going to go back down. And that's the thing I try to encourage people in relaunch. is that it's human, it's okay to be in the sad as long as you understand the I am business and that I am sad, but I'm not Hilary Jane sad. I'm not, that's not my reality. It's just for right now, I'm having sad emotional thoughts and it's okay.
Yeah.
And I love the way John Gray explains, you get a broken leg, you get a broken arm, and it takes 6 to 8 weeks before it heals itself, right? But we understand logically, prefrontal cortex, that there is the bone that is growing back together.
Right.
But when you have a separation, a breakup, a divorce, it's the heart. And there is a broken heart.
Yeah.
And the same thing, that the heart needs to have time to actually get back and grow back together from that brokenness. And so I think too many times we have, especially if you are a Gen X and you grew up with like this whole concept of like, kids are meant to be seen and not heard, put on a happy face. We don't, if you don't have anything, nice to say right now, for God's sake, don't say anything.
Right.
Well, we grew up with this. I remember I was almost 15 years old and I thought that there was something truly wrong with me, that I wasn't happy all the time. Like,
Really?
what's
Wow.
wrong with me? Like, I mean, why can't I be happy all the time? I should be happy all the time, but I wasn't. And, there were all those crazy, crazy commercials, right? Remember Angeli?
Oh, yes.
You can bring home the bacon fried up in a pan, and I'll never let you forget your man. And it was this perfume. And so, and then you have Cinderella, and oh my God, Prince Charming is going to come in, and the what was her, who's the gal? Snow White. Give me that big old kiss, right? I mean, these are these things that we have to be. Things have to be going well, and that's based on like not being of reality of circumstances will happen. But here's what I've really learned with relaunch. And this is really goes back to this why, is that when you can acknowledge the fact that outside circumstances are going to happen, there are going to be deaths, there's going to be sickness, there's going to be the ups and the downs in your business, but it's how you, and this goes back to the point you were making with looking at it from source, it's understanding that as long as you can not feel like you're on a surfboard riding, what is it, Maverick, the 100-foot waves, but you're out there kind of floating, waiting for the rolls to come in.
Yes.
That's where we need to be. And that
you set this up so beautifully, the way you said that, and what you led up to there. Now I can answer your question. Because the question was, what happened when I asked this woman out? And the answer is, I haven't seen her. She has not been in my circles at all. So I actually had to come to grips with, you know what? It just hasn't happened yet. There's not a deadline on this thing. I just have to just keep going and keep doing the thing that I do. And a couple of interesting things have come out of that. One is that I have been using the method, and I want to go into it a little bit more too, because there's some questions I have about it. But I've been using the method and essentially not trying to use it so much to manifest something, but rather using it to try to manifest the perspective, that source perspective we were talking about. That's why I brought that in. That's been my goal, to use the method to get myself into that perspective. Because, I mean, it's easy to say, take the source perspective, but if you're not feeling it, it's a long way away. And I realized that the song method was a way to get there quickly so that I could very quickly get into that source perspective. So I've been using it that way to get myself into that source perspective.
So this is so beautifully said, because when you think about music, elevating yourself, when you're elevating yourself to the highest level, that highest level of energy, and you think about the vibrational chart, that everything has a vibrational frequency, especially emotions. And when you talk about oneness, omnipresent, above even joy, that's where you're trying to ultimately, what you're talking about right there, which is that source connection of being open and available. And I'm going to say one other thing. When you talk about grounding yourself, since we are humans, we are on a planet, we are on planet Earth, we have our feet, we do have gravity pushing us down. So you've got the gravity coming from source, right? So what you're doing, which I love how you said, using tune in, you're allowing yourself to connect more with source, is that too many times we think of it as being a one way. Like I'm trying to access higher self. Whereas it is a two-way, and it's like that radio, the antennas, and it's going back and forth. And too many of us are, we may hear something, but we're not really listening to it. And so when you're saying, which is so amazing, you're talking about really tapping into source, you're saying, let me be an open channel to both ways. I want to connect. I want to give. I want to be able to manifest. So I'm going to be putting out there, here is my intention. Here's my challenge. But you're also saying, not only am I pushing it out there, but you're pulling it back into you. That's what all of this, that is what 3HQ is all about. And can I take it one step further? There is a mantra and a morning routine that I highly suggest when you're first getting into all of the concepts around being able to open yourself up to something bigger than you, right? Knowing that you're not, and if you're listening to this and you're still around at this point, you're willing and you're wanting to hear something. You're trying to connect with some bigger vision here, something that will allow you to kind of take shape of your future, of how the process will be for you. And so when I think about this, there is a mantra. And in fact, I want to just make sure I've got my book here because I wanted to talk about one other thing with you. Yeah, the relaunch mantra. I couldn't remember if I called it that finally in the book. But it allows, remember when I said too many people are trying to get you to take too big of a step to I love you, I love you, I love you, perfection, connection with, source. You just all of a sudden have to be there. And if it doesn't work, you feel like a failure. And so in the relaunch book, I talk about having this morning mantra when you first walk in. And when you think about be, do, have, right? Zig Ziglar came up with this as a marketing tool of, the concept of you got to be in order to do the things that you want and have, then you'll have the outcome. And too many people these days go at it from, if I have the connection, if I have the, the right energy, if I have the money, if I have the relationship, then I'll be able to do all these things and I will be happy.
Right. Yeah. The be coming out of the have, which is backwards.
It's backwards. So what I did was I created a mantra to get people started on their journey. And it's going back to where it all starts, which is you. Right? It all starts with you. So the way it's super easy for everyone to learn, and we can put it in the show notes, but I come out and I say, be me, just that first line, be me, do me, right? Have me back. Because throughout all of the stories we create and fabricate, it's like, so the first is be me, do me, have me back. And then I go into, I love me. I love me. And here's what you do with your hands as you're saying, I love me. It's a heart, right? So you have that heart space, and I'm holding up a heart if you're just listening. And then you open it up to the heavens to above to the universe, and it's now a vessel, right? So
By
it's a
opening your hands up. Right.
and you raise it up, so it's this vessel allowing for more to come down, but you're also pushing up as well, opening yourself up. So be
Mm-hmm.
me, do me, have me back,
Mm-hmm.
because too many of us have lost ourselves, and then giving yourself an acknowledgement of I love me, I love me, I love me, as you're bringing it
Yeah.
further up. It takes less than what, 10, 15 seconds. But what it does to start the day is acknowledging the fact that you can't be anything more than what you're bringing to yourself. And
Mm.
this guides you to open up and be me again, be the authentic me, be the real me. How about that?
Yeah.
Right? Be the real me. And then when you're saying, do me, do the things that are my values.
Mm-hmm.
Lead by your own values,
Right.
doing what you know resonates with you,
Yes.
right? And then have me back is this beautiful way to sit there and say, it's, I know we all feel lost at times. And it's have me back means coming into your own, being able to come together and know that all the millions of volts that are within you, they're all here now. And we talked about, the idea of the silver line. My
Mm-hmm.
podcast, the Relaunch podcast, is actually formally known as the Silver Lined Relaunch,
Mm-hmm.
is that everything has a silver lining. And
Right.
so as you really look at this, it's so simple, but it sets you on course for that day to be not only the taking in, please come down, source, be in me, guide me, let me know, what am I supposed to do today, because I'm really lost. Instead, it's the vessel to say, I'm going to fill it up with anything you have to offer, but I'm also going to be giving back, right? That whole
Yes.
highest self gratitude, that's where it all comes together. So,
And there's a piece right there that you just said that I want to tie into. Where we were talking about how not only are you receiving it, but you're going to give it back based on whatever source is willing to give you. And that piece, whatever source is willing to give you, that cued in my mind as we very easily attach to things. I, in a sense, attached to, I wanted to ask this one woman out. And I realized, well, why not take it a step further and say, well, this woman or better? Open myself
yeah,
up to
I love that.
possibilities.
That's so true. Yes. God, I love that. Well, that is like, I use that probably 20 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, here's my intention, right? I don't know if this is truly the end all. That's why I always
Yeah.
say when I am putting out, like before I got on your show today, I went through my tune in process, and I say, to the fact of like, my intention is last show was great. This show is going to be as great or better.
Or better. Absolutely. Yeah.
Totally. And whether it's, your dream job, I'll give you another great. Oh my gosh, this happened to me yesterday. I'm in the airport. I'm flying back from Los Angeles, and I get a 911 from a client. And it's a text message. I need to talk to you right away. And I'm like, "Wah!" Is this before I get on the flight, or, when
Yeah,
I
right.
when I
How
land
urgent
in
is
Denver?
this? Right.
I'm like, oh. And my one-on-one clients, I do this for them. I don't do this. I don't want you to think that this is how I operate. But in this scenario, I was like, oh, I bet, I've got to do it before I get on there. So I'm kind of waiting, and I'm holding back from getting on the plane. And she picks up and she's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, and what we had crafted and what she has been tuning into every single day, multiple times during the day, doing this process. When she first came to me about 4 months ago, she said, I've lost my passion for my job that I'm in. I want to get it back. I, need your help. I want to go through. She's worked with me in the past. And she said, I feel like there's just pieces missing. And I said, okay, let's go through this process. And I had her really define, like, what does she really want Forget about being in this job right now, but what does she really want? And clarity, lots of different steps. She finally got very clear. And about 4 days later, she said, okay, here it is. And passed it on and said, I feel really good. This is really what I want. And I said, okay, are you getting it right now? And she's like, absolutely not. A few days later, she calls and says, oh my God, I just got fired. I said, divine timing, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
come on. You didn't wait until next week to call me. You called me right before. You are very clear of what you're looking for. She's like, but oh my God, the market and everyone tells me there's no jobs out there. And I said, let's tune in right now. You don't need all these jobs out there, or that there's, no jobs. You need one.
Just
and
one.
It needs to be this job. And so we worked together. And then she went on a vacation. But we had already said, and this is something that you made mention to, and I do want to go back to this about timing. When I work with clients, I do have them put down a date that they're ultimately going for something. And the reason I do that is because as you're continuing to set up your micro action steps, we don't want to have the idea that everything can come in any amount of time, because we're going to be like, I'm never going to get the job. I'm never going to get the girl. I'm never going to get the, it's like, when is anything ever coming? And so I had her come up with an actual date. And I said, this was right when we first started going down this path. And she said, September 12th, I want this to happen and all that. And this is something I'm going to end up circling back. But I said, all right, September 12th. Well, yesterday was, oh my gosh, is it the 19th or the 20th? Yeah, yesterday was the 19th.
Right.
And that's when it happened.
Oh, okay.
So I said to her, so are you disappointed it didn't happen on the 12th? She starts laughing and she's like, it happened on the 19th. I said, but we had set out to have it on the 12th. And there's a point here, if you think about it. I mean, it goes back to your point. It ended up being the exact job she had created. And ready for this, what she was going for. They said, we're not going to hire you for this job, but we'd like to create a better job that's more specifically aligned with what you really can do.
Ooh,
and she
really
said,
nice.
She said, well, let me tell you, here are the things that I know I could do for you. And that's the job that they created. And that's the job. And there was an element of revenue as well. And I said, at the time, I'm like, all right, let's just go for this. And I said, what are you really going for here? And she said, ultimately, I'd really like it. It was a huge amount more. And she ended up getting exactly what.
Exactly. Oh, nice.
Exactly what she had written down.
Wow.
So what I'm saying here is the timing for her, it was part of the process, putting down a time and being firmly committed to that time. But when things don't happen on the exact date, there was a great speaker that I heard say, I put down for 2020, it was 2022, I put down 100 goals that I wanted to achieve this year. And the person who was interviewing him said, well, gosh, how many did you do? Did you hit the 100? And he said, no, I hit 73. And the guy was his name was John Lee. John Lee was the one doing the interview. He said, well, that, like, what's the point of my story now, right? and the guy said, but wait a second, I hit 73. 73 out of 100. Like, who would have thought? Normally I give myself, here are my 3 that I really want to do this year. I hit 73. So it's all about how your perspective on timing. And so when you're thinking about this woman and you haven't, connected yet, well, it's that what if, because you haven't connected yet, she's getting ready, you're getting further ready, or somebody even better is getting ready to come into your life. There's this wonderful connection that you can start to have to that, to the to what's coming. What is your North Star?
And then to carry it a step further in terms of what my experience has been, as I think we all know, any of us who have studied law of attraction to any degree, we realize pretty early on that the universe doesn't just deliver once. It keeps delivering until you either acknowledge or accept or do something with what it's delivering to you. And what it delivers may or may not always be a match. It's like there is a momentum that is building. And as the momentum builds, you get closer and closer to the end result that you're trying to aim for. And stuff shows up that gets more and more similar to that. So in this context, in the last month, what I've been finding is a number of women showing interest in me in ways that I completely did not expect. Not necessarily women that I'm attracted to. One or two I'm kind of attracted to, but all of a sudden I'm getting attention in ways that I wasn't getting before.
Beautiful.
So now I'm getting it, and this is the kind of thing that's easy to skip. I think it's one of the reasons I'm mentioning it. It's kind of easy to skip over this and say, well, it hasn't happened yet, so I'm going to dismiss all these little near misses that have been happening. But in fact, those near misses, what is it Cindy calls it? Cindy Chavez, a good friend of mine, former co-host, talks about it as being driftwood. When you're out at sea and you see driftwood, what driftwood means is you're close to shore. Because there's no driftwood out in the middle of the ocean. So if you're trying to get to shore and you see driftwood, you don't say, oh, darn, it's just driftwood. You say, oh, wow, I'm close to the shore. I'm getting there. That's what I'm experiencing. I'm experiencing driftwood.
But you know what you're also doing, which is such a huge, powerful part of this as well, is that you're acknowledging these small pieces of driftwood, right? Yeah. I think that when we put our expectations on, but I want the end prize, but it's not, then what's coming back to you is that you're looking at scarcity, but it didn't happen, and that's only going to bring more of that. Instead, you're acknowledging like, hey, I'm getting, more people that are interested and more people that, are coming into my world. And wow, I'm getting an opportunity to meet, a lot of different types of people I never would have before. Mm-hmm. And that's where you're starting to open yourself up. So what's going to happen is you're going to get more and more of that.
Right.
And that is so great. I love the driftwood.
Yeah, I always like that term, driftwood. It really just kind of cues it in my mind. Oh, yeah, a reminder. When you see driftwood, that's not bad news. That's good news.
Totally. That is so solid.
Isn't that good?
That is really good. But then you're also, when you're, especially in relationships where you're, there's a point where I often talk about, in the book, I call it hell in the hallway. And we keep shutting the doors, right? Too painful. Here's another door. Oh gosh, behind, door number 4 is this awful relationship. And door number 7 was that really bad one. And oh gosh, that one was, and eventually the doors have to be blown open. They have to be, because what will happen is, much like what we talk about, the tune-in process of being able to elevate ourselves really quickly, the long-term solution to being able to get out of our own way and to not have to put everything behind a door, but to be able to face it, to be able to be willing to accept it and realize like, we talked a little bit about this last time, your contribution to certain events in your life, but we have to be willing to go there and open up those doors because, and I mentioned bugs, the beliefs underground surfacing, these bugs, these past experiences, if we haven't dealt with them, if we haven't, tried to literally extinguish them, right, or exterminate them, they will continue to flare up. They will continue to have these, mini fires that will go off every time. And it's the alarms that will send you into, oh my gosh, I keep attracting these types of people. I keep going down. I'm, why do narcissistic people always seem to find me?
Yeah.
And so what I want people to realize is we're giving right now with the tune in process a power tool that can help you instantaneously have, energy on demand, right? This connection to source on demand. But long term, we have to look at the brain and how it is created and wired. And the only way to truly break free from some of these circular patterns that we keep going down is to confront the bugs face on.
Yeah.
And the only way that I have, seen from a neuroscience perspective is to take them through a process I created. It's called the Belief Blaster. It's a 5-step process. You're going to see. I love steps. They're little small,
I
little
can
bits.
tell that. Yeah, you're just loaded with them.
Yeah, they're bits, and they seem to work. And I've kind of have mastered these throughout the years of 20 plus years of coaching and modifying them. But the Belief Blaster, step number 1 is that first you have to realize that you might have a belief that's not serving you. It's not an empowering belief. It's not one that's like, yes, I feel so good about it. It's one that you're like, ugh, I'm not really sure I'd want people to know about this one. This is one that I keep pushing down. But when you can realize that you have these limiting beliefs, and we all do, we all have bugs, not one person out there. We all have them. We're human beings. So once you realize, then what I always like to do is, let's say it's that whole concept of I'm not good enough, right? That's a big one for people. I'm not good enough. Like, I don't have the right training, the certifications, the right degrees. Then what you do is you look at it from where you are right now in your age, and you take it through the decades. Where was it valid? Where was it warranted? Yeah, look at that. I wasn't good enough. I didn't get that. I got fired. I didn't get this promotion. I didn't, I never could reach that 6-figure, 7-figure month, year, whatever it is. And so once you've taken it through the decades and you've just like, hey, look at that. There it is. Yep, there it is. Then the second step is when you have the awareness that it's not always true, though. I have been good enough at some points in my life, and you take it through the decades again. And you could do this with relationships, right? It's a great one. You can do it personal and professional. So then you take it through and you say, and remember, a belief is something that we believe is 100% true all the time. But when you're doing step number 2, awareness that, wait a second, I'm not always not good enough. I've been good enough a lot of times. All of a sudden you're like, you're mixing it up. It's like a snow globe in your head. It's like, whoa, hey, I'm trying to keep, subconscious brain. I'm trying to keep you safe and familiar. And you're saying this and that. I'm confused. So then we go into step number 3. And this is where you have to do a release. And now you've got your decades of your limiting belief. You've got your decades of empowering, like, wait a second, I actually didn't have that happen. And then you go into step 3 and you release by either doing one of 2 things. The first is a release letter. And you actually, you go through a process of like, where did it start? Where did it start? What was the first time? It probably sometime when you were in, a child. Maybe it was mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, friend, teacher. And you write a letter. And you basically say, hey, this was yours. This was your story, your limiting belief, but it's not mine. I just took it on. I took it on because I was a little kid and this is what happened. But now I don't want it anymore. I'm getting rid of that bug, the belief underground surfacing, that limiting belief. And so at that point, the second part that you can do is called the mirroring exercise, which is literally you give that limiting belief to a loved one. You don't do it in real life, nor do you send the letter that we just talked about in real life. These are all things that you write down. But this one, you actually like say, a loved one, a son, a daughter, and you say, oh, you're not good enough. And for 30 seconds out loud in your car, in a room, you literally in front of a mirror, you give that limiting belief. You've never been able to do this. And it just, again, is just a mix up in the brain. Like your brain is like, wait, what? What's happening here? So then you go on to step 4, which is what I call the relaunch flip. And it's where you take that limiting belief and you create the opposite of that. And you put about 20 of these down. So instead of I'm not good enough, I'm a rock star. I am like on a, I'm on a trajectory for, a super successful 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure company, whatever it is. And you create the opposite of that. And then in step 5, it's where you literally retrain your brain and you put them into an app. And I'm not associated with this app. I just love it. It's called Think Up. And the Think Up app is where you can put your affirmations, and all those are affirming what you're ultimately going for, which is an empowering belief. And you can put that into the app, put music towards it, binaural beats towards it, and you listen 3 times a day. 3 times a day, in the morning, midday, and before you go to bed, so that your brain can continue to retrain the brain in the night while you're sleeping. And you do this for 62 to 67 days. This is how you have long term, where synaptically you prune away the limiting. You can see it happen and you create that empowering belief. Yes. And so that's the long-term solution. I've given you the short-term with tune in, instantaneously, on demand, like, you're watching a Netflix and you're binging. You can do that anytime during the day. But then when you really want to go deep and you really want success in your business, in your life, that's where we incorporate it into a 6-month business program to elevate yourself, get rid of your bugs, and be able to knock it out, get rid of it entirely. And that's where, like, everything you talk manifestation, that's where it's just like, what do you want? That, like I did with that woman and getting her ideal job in a job position where, in this world right now where jobs are, in her mind, non-existent.
Right. And I'm glad that you brought up again the 62 to 67 day process, because you mentioned that the last time you were here, and we tend to forget it. It takes a while to retrain the brain. I mean, that's more than 2 months. That's a long time. That's a lot of daily.
Let's say you're 50 years old and you've been having this limiting belief. You've been carrying around this bug since you were 5. So for 45 years, you've been living. Limiting belief, and I can get rid of it in 62 to 67 days.
Yeah, which is fantastic. But we have the tendency to look at it the other way. My God, I'm 24 days into this and I still haven't seen any improvement. With that, 24 days, usually after like a day. I've been doing this for a day now. It's like when my ex-wife was a former psychotherapist. She used to talk about how she'd have clients who come in. She worked with substance abusers, particularly alcohol abusers, and the client would come in and she'd say, "How are things going?" She says, "Great. I've been on the wagon now for quite some time." She says, "Oh, how long?" "Since 9 o'clock this morning."
It's true. People want that quick fix. That's why tune in is the quick fix. But the long term, where you don't just mask the problem, you actually blast it, belief blaster. That's where you have to take the actions in the order that I expressed. But when you do it, I mean, it's just like, it is the most incredible relaunch you'll ever have in your life.
So I'm going to try to tie the tune-in process, which, like you described just now, is a short process. You do it; it's for instant gratification process.
Totally.
And I'm going to tie it into the blaster process, the 62 to 67 day process, by suggesting, well, what happens if you deliberately apply the tune-in process day after day after day? And it ties into a question that I wanted to ask you about. So here's where it comes from. You're probably familiar with Neville Goddard and his teachings. One of his big things was to mention that you wanted to get yourself into what he called assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And for him, the wish fulfilled was the final scenes, so to speak, where something happens that demonstrates it represents for you, you've achieved whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. The thing that you were trying to manifest happened, and it happens in that scene. Well, what I find happens when I try to apply that concept, particularly, and I was finding it when I was doing the 4th step of your process, where you're trying to get into that place of, here's the result that I'm going for. I kept changing the scene. I kept changing it to a different scene every time. So I wanted to ask you, am I screwing up? am I doing it okay? Does it matter whether I keep changing the scene, or should I be programming that one same scene over and over again?
So in step 3, where you're creating your mini movie of the mind, of
Right.
that,
Step 3,
that,
yeah, right. Sorry, that was
yeah,
3.
step 3, but it's already happened, right?
Hmm.
Remember when I said step 4 is the micro action,
Right.
taking it one step, right? And we have the compound effect. If you do it 1 time a day, 2, 3, 4. But here's also something that you can do is, no, there could be multiple scenes. You could be going to
Okay.
Italy with this woman. You could be going to a dinner, to a concert. You know, you could be taking a walk on the beach. You could be doing all of these. Can be additional. Think of them as in your movie of the mind, in this mini movie. Think of it as they're just different scenes in this amazing
Larger movie.
movie that you're actually creating, right? The
Okay.
full length movie. When I'm saying the mini movie, these are small little snippets.
Right.
And just like you can take the click, remember at the end, I said you want to take that picture. Your photo album isn't just one picture, it's multiple pictures that you're capturing of those scenes throughout the movie. And so, but one thing that you did say that I do want to mention is, why would we, and can you do the tune in process and not do the actual belief blaster? And the answer is no. You must do, if you really want to actually have that limiting belief break away, versus tune in is creating an energy state to allow you to have an empowering moment, time around what you're ultimately going for.
Right.
But
Okay.
it's not getting rid of what's actually happening in your brain that is wired. Okay. Under a microscope, it's actually, you could see all of the, the limiting beliefs. And when they literally break apart is when you have done this for a days over day, and you're constantly, you would have to do the tune in process exactly the same way over and over throughout the day, really leaning into specifically going back even further. Because remember, I said the release letter, you need to be able to identify, and when you're talking about a challenge and you're talking about an intention, that's not the same as, where did a limiting belief start?
Right.
What are the stories there? It's almost like two different tracks. One is a very quick hit, like we've talked about, instantaneous. The other one really gets to through the neuroscience of it, the ability to understand, why do I keep falling back into this challenge of, I'm really like, I'm on track, everything is going really well, and then I sabotage it. What's going on there? And so I can get you to say, my intention is, I'm going to have the best month. I'm going to get the most amount of deals I've ever closed. Great. But that still doesn't help you with what's going to happen the next month, unless you keep tuning in multiple times a day for that success around the, more clients, more sales. We still have to get to what's really going on behind the, why do you have 1 month that is just like on fire, or you're about to crack 100 playing golf, and then you're like, what's going on? Like, there's a limiting belief there, like, I can't do it, I just can't. What is it about that says I can't do it? Because if you're having it there, you're having it in other areas of your life as well. And once you break free, that's why you can actually do this for sports. You can actually do the belief blaster. You can do, the tune in. You can do this for every single, literally every single area in your entire life. And
yeah, sure. Anything
but
that you
to
can apply your mind to, you can apply it to. I mean, which basically means any thought, any process, any belief, any desired event, you can apply it to anything. There's not a limit on that.
so powerful. It's
Yeah.
so powerful. But for those that are like not quite ready, they're not like, hey, I'm going to just do tune in, but they start to see that tune in works. Then all of a sudden I get people to come back and say, all right, can you help me understand? Like if I did the belief blaster, I'd have even more success. And the answer is yes.
And I would think also, I haven't experienced this in the past month, but I would think also that the more that you do try to use the tune-in method day to day, it becomes evident to you not only what the nature is of those beliefs that need to be blasted, but it also becomes evident how easy it is to blast them. It becomes very clear in a very short period of time that whatever that thing was that I felt was this immovable boulder is now all of a sudden a little stone on the ground. It's not what it was before.
That's it. What you just said. Yes. So now you realize it, right? And I said, realize is, we have to be able to realize it first.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. Once you realize it and you don't do anything to actually get rid of it,
you have to actually do something with it. Yeah.
You got to do something. And so what I think the tune-in process,
because we're also capable of turning stones into boulders. We can go either direction.
That's the truth. That is so accurate. And so I really want people to realize that, hey, first and foremost, use the tune-in process, start to see massive success, start to see things come to you, and then realize that you can get the book, you can come to one of my classes, you can, join our courses, and then take this to the next level, because these are the biggest tools, processes. 3HQ, when you start living the 3HQ, which the belief blasters are part of 3HQ, tune in is part of 3HQ, and you can do it. People often say, well, wait a second, isn't this very personal? Like this is a personal side. How does this actually relate to my business?
Mm-hmm.
Well, your business has a 3HQ as well. It has an identity. It has limiting beliefs, right? That the people that are in the company, even if you're a solopreneur and you're, working with any contractor, there's a 3HQ that we need to be operating in order to have massive success, in order to not just, oh, I really want to increase my revenue by 20% this year. Woohoo. That's just, you don't need to be thinking small when you are looking at it from the perspective with neuroscience, psychology, and then add in that ancient wisdom. That's when business and your personal life start to take off. And they are all one and the same. They're not siloed out.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. We have a tendency to believe that they are siloed, that they're all individual, separate, not connected, but they're all connected. They all work together. That's just the nature of the universe we live in.
100%.
Yeah. We're an hour and 13 into this, and
and we haven't even started.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, we wanted to have you back. Jody Lynn and I wanted to have you back because we were enjoying, like you, we were enjoying that session we had last month in August so much. We said, oh, we got to do more. This is so great. We just did another hour of it, and I'm thinking, well, that's not enough. We got to get more of this. So I'm not sure what's happening here, but something is turning into a dynamic. That's all I can tell you.
It's so good. And there's so much that, I really do appreciate how you interview and how you throw out, ideas from others, because it allows us to not just deliver the same old of what we always talk about. It kind of, wow, well, this is how this works with what you're talking about. And, the super conscious and source looking down. That's brilliant. I'm like, ooh, so good. But this is how I see it. And this is how you're seeing it. And this is how you're going to be able to, whether it's manifesting this incredible woman or manifesting the most incredible business for you, right? Go back to that woman I was talking about.
Right.
Like, that's what it's all about. And you give us the space to be able to really talk about it and let these incredible ideas surface. I love it.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's actually part of, it's not just my gift to you and to my audience, it's my gift to myself. I mean, we were talking earlier about be me, do me, have me back. I mean, that's how I do it. I do it through perspective. It's one of the best things I've learned by doing this show is how valuable perspective is. So all I'm doing is I'm just tying in these other perspectives that I picked up along the way. Because boy, that just sounds exactly like what this person was talking about, but he said it in this way.
Yeah.
And that's how it all comes in like that. It creates. I can't remember which guest it was who said this. I love the word though. She said it creates juiciness. There's a juice.
That's so good.
Isn't that a good way to describe it?
That's a great word. And it does. I mean, the concepts that, you triggered things and, oh, I remember when, Karen said this. And yeah, there's so much that we are so blessed to be, listening to and having people come on our shows and discuss it. And it's like, wow, where is this going? And then you sit back after, and I'll sit back and think about it tonight. I'll be like, dang, that was good.
Right.
That was like really, it when it impacts you, you're onto something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And there were some of those light bulb moments that, the lightning, the spark went off. And I'm like, oh, that is so good. So thank you for having me back, because it's been very eventful.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear. I've said we're going to have you back again at some point. I mean, just you may be the guest that doesn't go away. That's
I'm in.
A possibility.
I'm in. I love it. Just call me up. Hey, Hill, I need you tomorrow. I love it. These are the fun ones.
They really definitely are. So let's remind people how to find you. The relaunch.com, obviously, that's the place to go to get to. That's like the hub, right? That's the central point where you find everything.
And actually, the relaunch.com, and you can hear all about, we've got a great free PDF, a little video that's attached there to help you go through the actual tune-in process. And it gives you some examples of what are some micro steps as well. So definitely go grab that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's one thing to hear about it on a podcast and to be energized and excited about it. It's another thing when you sit down to do it yourself and you say, okay, wait a minute. What were the steps again? Oh, so I didn't take notes.
We
Damn
documented it. We made it. Yeah, we made it easy, because sometimes it's like, I just want people to hear it first.
Yeah.
And then they can go and just kind of, print it off, put it next to their desk, and they can look at it and be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to tune in right now. And we give examples, and it's super easy. And it's a free resource for everybody.
I also want to throw something else out. You asked me last month, and I picked what was going on in my mind at that point. What was my song that I wanted to grab onto? And at that point, it was September. My strongest sense is my sense of hearing. Always has been, to the point where many people, I mean, we get this on the show all the time. People who are able to visualize in depth, tremendously beautiful vistas and so forth. I've never been able to do that. I don't create images in my mind. What I create is sound in my mind. I can hear entire orchestras. I can pick out every single instrument in a symphony orchestra. I can hear every single instrument in a band. I can imagine entire. I could take a song and I can reprogram it into a different arrangement in my mind. That's the way my mind works. So I'm not visually oriented. I'm oral oriented or sound oriented. And in that sound process, when I think about September, well, the next moment I was thinking about other songs. It actually jumped from one moment to the next. I would have this song, and then there would be that song. I mean, there was one song that I kind of latched onto for a few days. Came out about 10 years ago, called "Smile," and so all of a sudden, "Smile" was a song that I wanted to just use that to leverage to get myself into the higher place.
Well, remember I said pick your top 5, have those songs, and have them mapped to certain areas. But one of the reasons that I created the tune-in process the way I did and made sure that it hit head, highest self, heart, head, is that there are people that are visual and can do great visualization. Others are auditory, others are kinesthetic. Then we've got, all 5 senses are really incorporated in there. So you may feel like, again, I'm not good enough. I'm not a very good, step number 3, putting together the visualization, but man, you rocked number 2, which was change the channel and listening to that song and bringing it in. So we wanted to make sure that we were covering each one of the areas when I started to look at it. And I was studying how people learn, how people process information. And I really followed a methodology around that in weaving together even the color. Remember I said in step 3, what's
Right.
that color and
Mhm.
10x it, I take you through the 1x, 2x, 3x, all the way to 10x it. And that's all part of really under a scan, lighting up every single part, like all these different parts, because that's what's going to allow for the change to happen, the state change, allow for the imprint, that, that branding inside, that anchoring of what we're really going for. And it's interesting and again, I know we have to wrap up, but whenever and I do this. It's on automatic. It really is. It's autopilot for me to tune in. But let's say I am literally like, and I've had this happen where somebody just jumps right into the call, and I'm like, I didn't get to do it. Like I absolutely see a difference in when I don't tune in before.
Yeah.
I don't
Sure.
have the clarity. I don't have that, like, this is what I'm going for. This is what I want to happen. It's that moment. And as I said, it takes less than 60 seconds to do it. Like, everyone can be a master. Every single person can be a master of this process. And the more you do it, the more you're going to be like, I can't believe I haven't been doing this all along.
Yeah, true, very true, and it's part of the reason why I asked about the scene that you play out, right?
It was a
And
beautiful question because it's so good. Yes, multiple scenes, just like
yeah,
a movie.
well, in my case, because the auditory is such a strong piece, I can get myself into that high feeling place through the song really, really easily. It's just that I would allow myself to stumble because, oh God, do I have to get the scene the same way it was before? Well, that's gone now. I don't have to worry about that anymore. It's like, what scene do I want to create? I don't know. I'll create one right now. I have no idea what it's going to be. Well, we'll come up with it.
And also, as you do your micro steps, you're advancing.
Yeah.
So your scene should be potentially changing. Now, it
I
may
would think it would
take,
have to. Otherwise, it gets stale.
yeah. But let's say your challenge is something bigger that could take a long period of time.
Mhm.
It may take a week, 2 weeks, in order for you to feel like, wow, I've started to see those micro actions, compound interest starting to take form, you're being aware of, like, oh, that actually, wow, hold on. That just happened. And that's when you can start to change the scene. There's some people that get caught up in, like, well, if I keep, I'll forget about the first scene, but that's okay. You're advancing along the way. It's the process of tune in that is scientifically backed, that is neuroscience based. And it's the idea, and I think I mentioned last time, whether you're doing it 1 time a day around the challenge or whether you're doing it 10. If you're doing it 10, you're going to advance faster. That's why, my gosh, tune in. If it's a big challenge, or if you're like wanting to nail something and your intention is like so clear and spot on, tune in as many times as you possibly can, because what you're doing is you're further seeding this, further anchoring it, further looking for opportunity and noticing, like, forget about the coincidences anymore. You're starting to see, as you said, hey, more women are, like, starting to pay attention.
That's right.
And that's where you're already seeing the power of tune in. That's it. And so you don't have to be continuing with the same scene. You can be modifying and enhancing. I've got women that are like, I don't want to be in the same blue dress that I intensified the color. I'm feeling like I want to be in my red dress or my green dress or, that flower dress. So that's where it's like, I'm glad that you said that, because it does come up, but it usually comes up, people are like, okay, I've been doing this and I'm just wondering. So it was a great question.
Well, you also just mentioned something else. I mean, we're like way beyond an hour, so I'm just not going to worry at this point.
If these people are still in, we're in with you.
But you mentioned, do it many times during the day. If you're really going, especially if you're going for something big, just keep doing it throughout the day. Well, I have long had a playlist on my phone that I call my positive playlist. It's got all of my, all my favorite stuff that I like to listen to. And I've listened to it for years. What I find myself doing in the last month in particular is I'll play the list, as I'm driving usually. That's when I'm most often doing it. And as I'm hearing each song, I'm finding myself doing step 3 while I'm listening to the song. And then the next song comes along and I do step 3 to that one. And then the next song comes along, I do step 3 to that one.
Well, I'm going to clip this right here. And I'm going to say, yes, this is my testimonial. This stuff is so powerful. And you're a creation junkie now. You're creating and you're creating it as you go. And I love playlists. The idea that there are so many potential songs that light you up. And somebody said to me the other day, there are some challenges that they can get to an energetic level, but it doesn't feel right to have a song like Celebration, let's say, right? I want something that is more, I don't know, ethereal, like, something that just really resonates. And do you have to have words? Have you seen that? Oh gosh, it was all over TikTok, and it was that person that sang, and it was like a 13 or 14-year-old boy, and he sang at like the highest vibrational level, and people in the crowd, everyone got teary-eyed because it hit, like, it was so powerful. So whether it is hallelujah, whether it is it's what resonates for you. And if you have 5, let's say, songs that, if it's a financial, work related, this is the song, like you're powering yourself up, like, I can do it. Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, made mention this last weekend. He is the coach of the Colorado Buffaloes.
Right.
And he said, I have this kind of song, this thing in my head. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And when you start to think I can, I think I can, I believe I can. And that's what he says. So it's kind of this concept. You hear that song and it automatically, and I mentioned this last time, if I'm going on to a show, I have a song that immediately gets me to a level where I know my state is about impact. My state is about how can I share, tune in, Belief Blasters, relaunch with as many people as possible. But it's a song that it's my go-to. But then a new song will come out, Miley Cyrus Flowers, and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to mix that into, my toolbox. I got another one. And so I'll play around and, every once in a while I'll wake up and I'll have a total rando song come to my mind, or I'll be flipping through, the stations and something will come up. I'm like, oh, and I'll use that just to have some fun, to mix it in. But I do like, and I mentioned this to you before, when you're thinking about your relationship and bringing in this, woman, and having September be that core song. Because there's something about you're elevating. It's like the affirmations, you're affirming it, but you're not only affirming it with the words, you're affirming it with the music. And that music repeated over time is now triggering your brain around your intention.
Yeah.
That song. So if you keep switching up your songs, then you're not utilizing the whole tune in. But could you have a secondary song that is all around, let's say, I want to, have the passion of when, I was, that passion to keep going with this relationship, and the fun, the romance, the sensuality. Yeah. Get a new song and just start to have that too. So you have kind of you're taking it to another level with a different song, but your core.
And by repeating the same song, you're building on the NLP effect, the effect of building an anchor in, essentially, so that every time you hear that song,
right? Tiny Habits, BJ Fogg. Yeah. He talks about the anchor. He talks about when you're brushing your teeth or going pee or whatever you're doing, that can be the, you do it right after. So That's your trigger, and then you do it, and then you have the anchor, and so it's really, there's so much science behind doing it. So very cool.
Wow. We're closing out on an hour 30.
So good. So good. I think there's a song like that, right? So good. So good.
And I do have my thing I have to do, and boy, I really have to do it here too. I mentioned last time you were here that on behalf of those people you've never met, you've never seen, thank you for what you've been doing. You've been making a difference in their lives. I'm going to tack on to it. Thank you for what you've been doing, putting messages out to people here on LOA Today, because you're making a difference in their lives. That's a huge, huge deal.
Wow. And so are you. And anytime we can come together with our like energy, I'm all in.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. We don't know what date is yet, but I guarantee it's going to happen.
It'll happen again.
And we'll make sure it's on a Wednesday so Jody Lynn can be there too.
Yeah, I was going to say we'll end up doing the New Year's Eve show. We're the ones you're going to be with us all night long.
We ain't going anywhere, folks.
No, we're here with you all night.
Oh, thank you.
That's not a bad idea. We'd have a lot of fun.
That would be fun, actually. That's something to think about. Absolutely. Yeah. So, Hilary, thank you so much again for joining us. We really, really appreciate that. This has been so much fun. Did we actually hit a higher level than last time? I don't even try to compare them anymore, but you have a better sense of it.
You know, I got to say, this was a one-on-one energy. Last time we had, Jody Lynn and
the three-way energy is different. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a little, it's just a different vibe. But I got to tell you, another, mic drop moment here.
There we go. That's a good way to say it. I love that. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you to podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.